good afternoon, and good night. This is the Endgame Backstory, and you are here with me, Lacey Lady Blaze King, as I take you through the why behind the what. Now, we woke up to this news this morning about this very disturbing 7.8 magnitude earthquake that was followed up about, they said it happened at about 4:20 a.m. in Syrian time, and then by 2 o'clock that afternoon, which was approximately, we're behind them by about 8 hours. So we'll say about 8 o'clock our time, when we were just learning about the initial devastation from the first earthquake. That's when the story crossed the wire that the second earthquake, 7.7, almost exact same magnitude, had came across and struck again. Now, and I'm going to put this up here. There's a gentleman on YouTube. His name is, his handle is under Dutchsinse, something like that. I'll put that link to this video. He has been, for the past 2 years, almost accurately predicting these earthquakes. And it's so funny because he had just ended a 2-week watch. And 5 hours after he ended that 2-week watch for a 7.8 exactly magnitude earthquake to strike in the South American, Argentina, Brazil kind of area, it struck 5 hours after his watch expired.
Turkey, and I say earthquakes because you might not be aware. That's why I'm doing this update now. Let you all know. An additional extremely large earthquake struck while I was taking a quick sleep nap after the big earthquakes originally. A second 7.5 to 7.8 earthquake struck, in addition to additional 6s and 5s. But the second 7.5 to 7.8 caused additional severe damage, and the location is about 50 to 60 miles to the north. If you watched my updates last night, we were talking about the area about 100 miles, 60 miles in particular I was mentioning, about watching around for potential large earthquake activity that could go up to or greater than the original. Now, what I'm going to do here is take you through my Twitter page first to show you, here is the moment the second earthquake struck. They had media there. I'm not going to play the audio on it. It immediately hits. And many, many, many more buildings collapsed when it hit. Death toll is now in the multiple thousands. 2,400, 3,000 is what's being reported. Stuff like this, guys. This person up there is alive. They're trapped on the third or fourth floor with a sandwiched building on the fourth floor hanging out the side. Look at this. I can't even take this kind of stuff. I'll start. Seriously.
There was a 2-week watch because about 2 weeks ago, there was a very large earthquake down in South America. And so now he wakes up. I went to go check his feed immediately to see what his thoughts were on it. And he was astonished by the fact that it was the exact same magnitude and in the course direction where he said that it would hit. It hit along that course direction, but 10,000 miles, possibly 15,000 miles away. And so there are people out there who are able to see. And now it's very interesting because he said you want to watch within the next 24 to 48 hours and possibly even out as much as a week, that there will be possible earthquakes to hit Italy, Greece, and that entire line that's on the northern portion of the Mediterranean Sea. And so we're going to be watching for that. But the earthquakes, we know, are always devastating. We always hope that they're minor earthquakes, but there are very many major earthquakes that are happening worldwide. Last count I saw, it was 2,300 had been reported killed. The last earthquake of this magnitude in Turkey, and they're a very earthquake-prone territory, they actually lost 17,000 lives. They're looking at something like that possibly also coming from this event, simply because there were so many people that got caught off guard by it being at 4:20 in the morning. Most people are going to be asleep. They have a lot of stone stack building architecture over there, meaning they're just large stones. They're more ancient type of structures. And even though they've had, a lot of the damage hit some of the high rises that they had, those high rises, even in and of themselves, had not been secured as the rest of Syria had been in reaction to the last major earthquake they had in 1993, I believe it is. And so now we have here, mass casualties simply because the infrastructure of that specific area was not strengthened or had not had a chance to be strengthened yet, based on their reconstruction and development that they were doing in response to the last earthquake. And so they are expecting that death toll to be very high. They're expecting it to be very broad and widespread. Again, and I'm looking at some of the other reports. I'm unsure if anybody in that area has that thought, but everybody does know about aftershocks. But if there's going to be other earthquakes to come, this would probably be that time, simply because where this earthquake struck 1, 2, 3, about 4 major fault lines, and possibly a fault line they did not detect ever in the world's history being there. It's almost as if they have the fault lines on the west side of Saudi Arabia, on the east side of Saudi Arabia, and on the south line of Saudi Arabia, but there is no fault line at the north side of Saudi Arabia. However, the earthquakes that are going on today and the tremors, that actually disputes it, because now they're saying that there is no fault line. This specific earthquake started at the beginning of that fault line that ended on the east side, on the west side of Saudi Arabia, and then there's another one that traverses across the top of the Mediterranean, where I was saying, based on his findings, that Italy, Istanbul, a couple of those places would be hit, but it would probably ultimately stop right around Italian soil. So he gave the warning that they need to be prepared for an earthquake event as well in the next coming, day or so, possibly even within the next week, which seems correct. So that's actually going west, but to the north, but going east, where there is no, they're stating there is no tectonic plate to the north. The earthquakes are traveling west as if there is a tectonic plate there, and it's traveling at the northern border, and it's going to meet the tectonic plate that is on the western border of Saudi Arabia. So now you will, it's almost forming some type of a square. As I said, there's a tectonic plate. If you think of Saudi Arabia, it is a peninsula. And so on the west side, on the east side, and on the southern borders of this country, there are fault lines. But again, they're saying there's no fault line on the north. However, the earthquakes and the tremors that are developing, they are moving west, and they're going farther, almost as if you think about it, if there is a pressure or a crack, or even if there was not a fault line there, but the fault line was too deep to actually register on whatever the USGS or any of these other earthquake watch departments have going on, it could be cracking just that deep. I believe they said it was 6 miles underground. The deepest that you can get to the earth, I believe, is about 8 miles. So this is a pretty deep fissure that's growing underneath that area, and again, it's looking like it's going to be a swarm, and it's going to spread there. It looks like they're saying that there's going to be earthquakes in the coming days going to the west as well to the east, and the one that hit this morning in the area, I believe it's Aram, part of the Padan Aram region, which is the Aleppo region of Syria, that also has some biblical significance. I'm not going to get into that. I didn't have time to pull up those scriptures or research any of that, but I just thought that it was extremely amazing that, not based on the biblical history of this area, as well as the current day situation that's going on with the infighting and the conflict with Israel, It is a very hotly contested area. This is also an area where a lot of biblical scholars feels like the Antichrist is going to come out of. Something huge or major is going to happen, and the leadership is going to have someone emerge in order to truly lead them in such a time of chaos. And that's how the Antichrist is going to be able to get his foothold into the political and the world stage, and that's how we are going to start seeing him come. Now, if it's going to be something like an earthquake of this magnitude, unsure. They said this was just under a megaquake, which would be 8 and above. So there was at just in 2 of them today, right at 7.8. So one of the outlets actually reported a 7.9. And so that region where the earthquakes, that start point, and then it went out, and let me just pull out my map. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, so we're looking at this region here specifically. And we can't really see this. I'm gonna go over here and transition this. Okay, so I'm sorry, I hand drew this because I needed to know what the Bible names were. So if we go over here, this is the area. This is the Mediterranean Sea. And then this area right here, this border, this is Turkey, this is Syria, this is Israel. So right here, and as we see Saudi Arabia right here. And so you have a fault line going up here, actually all the way up here. Fault line goes all the way up here. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of these, well, that's a border state, but it breaks off where the Euphrates River, the Euphrates River is right here, and it comes all the way down. So out of this head right here, which is on the side of Iraq, where Saudi Arabia comes in together. So we have a fault line here, we have a fault line here on the southern border, and on this northern border. But this is where the earthquake happened. And these earthquakes are expected to go this way. This is Greece. Italy is over here. I didn't draw that part. But over this way, moving over this way to where is another fault line. So you see this one fault line cracking and going here. And that's almost, when I saw the sheer number, we only heard about, we only heard about 2 of the earthquakes, but as of this morning, it was well over a dozen tremors and earthquakes in the 4 and the 5 magnitude categories, and they were all moving towards that inland fault line that is closer to Iran, Iraq, and Turkey's border, where those 3 actually come together. So we're going to be watching that. We're going to be seeing what's going on with that, and even though we understand biblically the type of country this is and the conflict that is associated with this land here, we want to pray for those people. We want to keep those people ever in our prayers, that the recovery is quick and that God is lifted up in every discovery here. I wanted to give a little bit of a backstory on this breaking news. It's not necessarily the breaking news because that has been well covered, but it was interesting as I was studying the actual location of it, just some of the things that came out as far as warning systems, the scientific community, and some of the things that they have been tracking and they have seen historically, and that they are kind of lining up to what's happening right now. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and share so that you're able to get these backstories as well as breaking news as they come. As this channel is being developed, content will come out more regularly, but just wanted to drop in here and let you know what's going on and what we're looking at so far as of, what time is it? 1 o'clock Central Time in the United States on January 6, 2023. And what's going on in Syria. And so we will continue to stay updated and keep this updated so that we'll be able to follow along and give you other breaking news regarding this specific event as we move forward. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss a single broadcast. This is Lacey, Lady Blaze King, signing off for the Endgame, and make sure your life is part of God's Endgame.